Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everybody. My name is Elizabeth Press and I am your MC for this event. Welcome to this side event on the margins of the IRENA's 11th Assembly. The event is hosted by IRENA and it's organized by the United Nations. It is focused on the high-level dialogue for energy 2021, accelerating progress towards universal energy and net zero emissions. Before we start, I would like to go over a few housekeeping points. Please note that this event might be followed in real time by live stream. You can find the link on IRENA's website, in our newsroom, on article around on the IRENA pre-assembly live coverage. The plan is to have interventions as well. We hope that we will have sufficient time for a discussion after the panel. In the case that you wish to intervene, please raise the hand on the Zoom platform to record your request. In the case that you have any technical difficulties, we will move to the next speaker on the list. In the meantime, IT colleagues will work to reestablish the connection. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Francesco La Camera, Director General of IRENA, to deliver his opening remarks. Director General, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's a real pleasure for me to welcome you to this important event on the UN High-Level Dialogue on Energy 2021, accelerating progress toward universal energy access and net zero emissions. We met a few days before the 11th session of the IRENA General Assembly. 163 IRENA members, along with 20 states in a session, and numerous partners, including our UN Energy family, will take stock of the energy transition around the world and set the priorities for IRENA's work in the coming year. While we'll get together every January for the past 10 years, this time is not like others. 2021 began with good news about the commencement of vaccination against COVID-19 in many parts of the world. But the threat linked to the health, economic, and social crisis will remain with us for some time. Our long-established notion of economy and energy system have been shaken to the core. While it was universally accepted that the global energy system must be transformed, the COVID crisis has laid bare of harsh reality and vulnerability and inequalities. Energy is a cornerstone of socioeconomic development, yet our current energy system is unfit for the resilient, equitable, and climate-safe world that we all want to live in. The COVID crisis has also exposed the best of our relationship with energy. It demonstrates the renewable-based systems are far more resilient than previously thought, thus bolstering the business case for an accelerated transition. IRENA post-COVID recovery report shows how we can use this moment to make a decisive shift in the current trajectory and use energy transition as a vehicle to link the short-term recovery measures with the sustainable development and climate priorities. Investing in renewable technologies, energy efficiency, flexible infrastructure, and innovation will take us a long way toward the Agenda 2030 and the Paris Agreement objectives. We have technologies, we have the know-how, we have the means. It is no longer acceptable to have hundreds of millions without or with limited access to modern energy services. How can we allow to have health facilities with no power and education system without the benefit of modern technologies? How it is possible that out of 108 gigawatts of renewables added in 2019, only 2 gigawatts was in sub-Saharan Africa, which has the greatest energy access needs. The current situation is giving us an opening to accelerate energy transition and do so equitably. The cost of renewable technologies has decreased dramatically, as we all know, over the last decade. Their deployment at scale will further reduce cost and drive innovation while creating jobs, opening new opportunities for industrial development, improving health and environment. Distinguished guests, this year will be crucial in our collective ability to make a lasting difference. The UN Secretary General High-Level Dialogue on Energy has the potential to propel the implementation of the energy-related goals, a target on global development climate goals in the year of COP26. And I'm very pleased that my dear friends, the Secretary General Special Representative for Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of the high-level dialogue, Damilola Ogunbi, will discuss the summit and the progress leading up to it in more detail during her keynote remarks. Irina is pleased to be part of the UN Energy family that will drive action, preparation of the dialogue and beyond. We will continue to play an active role, bolstered by Irina's global reach, forward-looking mandate and expertise in energy transition. And the UN Energy family is a formidable tool where we can draw upon respective comparative advantage and align our effort for a greater impact. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at an important crossroads. Forward-looking, ambitious government policies, strategies and investment choices can create the momentum to enact systemic change, boost economic recovery, and deliver the energy transformation we need. Now is the time to reimagine the future so that the economic recovery will drive an acceleration in the decarbonization of our society. Irina remains your trusted partners and look forward to working with the whole UN family to have a successful high-level dialogue in September, but most importantly, to ensure a lasting effect for the benefit of all. So thank you, and back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Director General. And I would like now to introduce our keynote speaker, Ms. Damilola Ogunbi, Special Representative of the Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All, UN Energy Co-Chair, and also High-Level Dialogue Co-Chair. The SRSG, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you to Francesco and the whole team of Irina to set this up, along with my UN Energy colleagues. I'm going to be giving a presentation. I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible on the high-level dialogue process, because a lot of people we have on the call now, we really want them to be engaged in a truly inclusive process. Next slide. This just shows you the mandate that we had received from the Secretary General. The summit itself is going to be held at Onga in September this year. It is going to be a summit level event at the General Assembly. The co-chairs and the dialogue chairs are myself, UNDP Administrator Akin Steiner, and Mr. Liu, who is actually the Dialogue Secretary General from UNDESA. Apart from that, we also are going to have an advisory group of non-state actors and UN Energy members fully supporting the process, just like Francesco just mentioned. Irina is one of our key partners. Next slide. I think one of the important things I didn't mention from the last slide is this is the first time an event like this is happening in 40 years, since 1981. So it's really, really critical that we really take this year as the year for energy, especially with everything that's happening with the COVID pandemic. So I'm not going to go through all the key objectives, but the key thing is it's new ambition, new targets, and new funding requirements, all targeted to SDG 7, energy transition, renewable energies, obviously, and obviously energy access, and how we actually get there as a global community. There are two key outcomes that are going to come out of this. There's a global statement with action plans that we're going to work with the working groups on, and I'll discuss that a little bit later. And there are energy compacts, which we really hope that everybody on the call today also embraces within the organizations. Is for countries, cities, and companies, and it's key compacts on energy, which we hadn't had before. And again, I'll talk about that in a little while. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the themes and the tracks that we're going to have. The themes are set, the tracks might change a little bit, but it's 5 themes, 3 key themes directly linked to SDG 7, which is energy access, energy transition, and energy, and basically the relationship with other SDGs. And then we have cross-cutting themes, capacity building and data, which obviously is critical, and then finance and investment, and nothing really works without finance and investment. It's important at this time to say that the finance that actually goes to energy in sub-Saharan Africa, which Francesco mentioned, it's probably about 4% of the global average. And if you think there's at least 565 million people in that region that need access to energy, it's quite staggering. And one of the key outcomes, and something that's going to run all the way through, are obviously the energy compacts. Next slide. Okay, one of the questions we're always asked is just another compact. And what we're trying to say is that there's never been a compact that has a sole focus to energy. And we've worked very hard with our colleagues from the World Bank, IRENA, and UNDP, UNDESA, to actually hash out something that is actually energy focused, that is in line with the NDCs, in line with the SDG goals, but making sure that there's kind of new commitments, because we don't only have to think about the high level dialogue, but we have to think about what happens the day after. So people are signing up to basically being tracked on the commitments they've made over the 10-year period. And so this is what describes it. And I'm sure after this presentation, after this event, this presentation can be shared to everybody. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so this is the structure of how it would work. They are basically the roles and responsibilities. So under each theme, there are groups called Global Theme Champions, which are member states in the UN, and they take on a very, very firm global advocacy role in terms of emphasizing and basically talking about, in any forum that they can find, about the event. They probably will host their own ministerials as well. And we're really, really looking forward to this, because it's a key role to elevate the conversation of energy, just like the conversation of climate is elevated, and also a showcase to people that you really cannot achieve net zero by 2050 if you don't achieve universal access by 2030. Underneath that, with the tracks, there's also some very key roles. There's a multi-stakeholder working group where you have co-leads, which are, best-in-class institutions, especially UN energy members, and it's going to be 2 or 3 co-leads. And then you have members of the working groups, again, which have been carefully selected with the best minds globally to come together and solve this issue. We're also going to have an advisory group who's going to advise on the process of the whole event, and the SG would be announcing that a bit later. And it's also important to say that with the Global Theme Champions as well, that announcement will be made in the next couple of weeks, very soon. Next slide. So I've spoken to this already, but there are 4 layers of participation. And then obviously there's going to be some public participation throughout the event. So I will just move on to the next slide. Okay, so this goes into a little bit more detail on, when we say what is a global theme champion. One of the key things that we have to make sure of is the commitment is at the highest level of the government. So there has to be a relevant portfolio minister taking on that role for the sovereign. They have to have preparatory meetings in form of ministerials or any types of meetings to keep encouraging the conversation. We're hoping that we get at least as much as possible equal representation from the global south and the global north. As being global theme champions, they're also signing up to energy compacts and convincing other sovereigns and cities and companies to do the same. And they will also be collaborating in terms of the advocacy part with the technical working group. Next slide. So for the co-leads, this is kind of the institutional heavy lift in terms of the problem, where we're going to share with a lot of the working groups another key, hopefully another 2 weeks, what is the UN pledge to this? What can we do midterm instead of just waiting to 2030? And in that, what we expect from the co-leads of the technical working groups is to really take that on with all the members of the technical working groups and really come up with new innovations and new solutions on how we do achieve these very key SDGs, SDG 7 targets, bearing in mind with COVID, we've probably pushed back a lot. And unfortunately, there's, with energy access, clean cooking and transition, we might have lost some momentum. And the outcome of this is a preparation of a theme report that would be presented and endorsed at the summit as well. Next slide. So again, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail. It's just important for everybody to note that we really got sector experts to be part of it. We made sure we had a right balance of male and females in this, and also a right balance of global north and global south. We have a lot more private sector influence than we typically have these UN events. Again, it's because we are trying to push the needle, and nothing is off the table. True innovation is key for us to really succeed. Next slide. And this is just to talk about the advisory group, which I've mentioned a lot. We're hoping that they'll help us identify and mobilize significant innovations in big partnerships as well, and they will guide us through the entire process. Next slide. So a lot of people have asked, what is the relationship with the high-level dialogue and COP? I'm pleased to say that we are working hand in hand, and the UK will have a pretty significant role even with the high-level dialogue. It's a key milestone where energy meets climate. You might all know there's actually an Energy Transition Council on the COP team, which I sit as co-chair. So a lot of the alignment that we're trying to do with the COP team into the high-level dialogue, we think it's a really, really great time. The high-level dialogue comes a couple of months before COP. We're also trying to sync a lot of ambition. So we're utilizing the energy compacts for both events, basically. And yes, there's a lot more to come, but the good thing is that we're constantly talking, and the UK will play a significant role in the high-level dialogue. Next slide. Okay, I hope this is my final slide. I think I've spoken enough, and this is just to show the key milestones and things that we have done. I think right at the bottom now, we're at the IRENA Assembly, and there's going to be a lot more high-level dialogue preparation meetings, a lot to do. Please get involved. Please email us. There's a website, which I hope that's coming up. And we really, really want to hear from you, and really, really excited. High-level dialogue stuff, even SE4, just looking at this as this is the year of energy, and this is the year we really need to push the needle. So on that note, I'd like to thank all my colleagues, and especially some people on the call here, for I see Rohit from the World Bank, for all the hard work they've already put into it. But we have a long way to go, and really looking forward to engaging with all of you. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you. Both Francesco and Damianola made very, very clear points that the high-level dialogue as an incredibly important moment in time, but the process leading to the dialogue, as well as what happens after this dialogue, will matter a lot, and it is the main purpose of our meeting today. So we will now have a discussion. We will now listen to a panel of distinguished guests in a panel discussion that will speak on different ways to leverage the UN high-level dialogue on energy, so that we can come to that point ready, and also with the new momentum for the action afterwards. So it is my pleasure to hand over to Mr. Minoru Takada, team leader at UNDESA, and also the high-level dialogue on energy secretariat. Minoru will lead us through the panel discussion interventions after, and I hand you the floor.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. The distinguished delegates, the ladies and gentlemen, it's my very pleasure to moderate this the distinguished panel of experts coming from all over the world to talk about expectations, basically, for the high-level dialogue energy. As Director General of the Elena already mentioned, we know why we have to really work on the energy topic now. And the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which has 17 SDGs, make it extremely clear the importance of energy in achieving the sustainable development. And at the same time, Paris Agreement on climate change, it's also very clear why energy is so central in achieving 1.5-degree pathway, which we really have to achieve. And to that effect, 2050 net zero emission is a must. So there's no sort of argument as to the importance of energy in that context. So that's why General Assembly, as SRSG Ogunbiyi just now mentioned, first time in 40 years, we are meeting at the General Assembly. So this is all member states decided to meet and discuss energy agenda and the result to move forward together on that. So we at the United Nations, all the partners that we work with, are very excited to take advantage of this opportunity to make sure we deliver as high, as best, as large as possible. And then as you can see that, SRSG Ogunbiyi's presentation articulated the processes and our ambitions to make that happen. Now we need to get down to the content. I think reality is that, of course we know why, and we also know what needs to be done. We need to achieve SDG 7. It has 3 major targets on energy access, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. And also we have 2050 zero emissions that we have to achieve. The question is going to be how we get there. And how do we actually work with and together? And this is a question of who. And then in 9 months down the line, what results do we want that we can use to carry things forward next 10 years and next 30 years in the area of energy? So this is where we want the wisdom from the experts who are gathering in the panel. So with this one, I would like to now turn to the first of the distinguished panel, Her Excellency Ms. Nawar Al-Hosani, who is a permanent representative of United Arab Emirates to ELENA. I don't know who here you are, Nawar. Thank you very much for joining as usual. Now, Nawar, I have basically, a very simple the big questions here. Of course, we have to push SDG 7, energy, right? And the UAE has been a sort of a leading position many, many years and demonstrating what can be done. So from your perspective, what do we need to do to actually push this needle further? And I think how high-level dialogue energy at the United Nations on energy this year, you think can help to push this sort of action moving forward? Over to you, Nawar.
Thank you, Minoru. Thank you, everybody. Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, welcome virtually to Abu Dhabi. It is an honor to be invited as a panelist in this launch of the UN High-Level Dialogue on Energy, this technical working group, and even more honored and humbled to be invited to join as a member of this working group to support this process and reinforce the implementation. We have seen in the numbers that presented earlier by Francisco and by my friend Emilola that we are definitely far behind achieving our goal for universal energy access. But since 2010, 1 billion more people gained access to electricity today. This is an encouraging development, and it should only motivate us further to make sure that the remaining 789 million people who still don't have access get it soon in an affordable and clean manner. On behalf of the UAE and as a member of the UN, we do strongly support the commitment to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. And the achievement of SDG 7, which is access to energy, is fundamental to achieve not only this one goal, but many others, if not actually all. Even now, more than ever, and the current COVID pandemic, it has shown us that it's very important. We have seen it every day, how important energy is in our daily lives and crucial to the support, the health and wealth of our people. The UAE is of the belief that one SDG cannot be achieved without the involvement and cooperation and integration of the remaining SDGs. We see clean energy, in particular renewable energy, as a major part of our path to find a sustainable solution. This goes along with our firm commitment to combating climate change. Let me quote the word of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President and Prime Minister of the UAE and ruler of Dubai. Climate change is the most prominent battle for mankind in the coming decades to preserve the planet Earth for new generations. This statement was reinforced by our national determined commitment, our second NDC, which reiterates the UAE's national pledge to reduce our carbon emissions by 23.5% before 2030. Central to this commitment is the development of renewable energy solution here in the UAE and across the globe. Our clean energy capacity or clean power capacity, including solar and nuclear, is on a track to reach 14 gigawatt by 2030 from just 10 megawatt in 2009. Now, in 2015, we reached above 100 megawatt and 2.4 gigawatt in 2020. To date, we have invested more than $40 billion in clean power projects locally. The UAE has been a pioneer, and I'm very proud to say, in diversification, guided by very ambitious clean energy target of 50% by 2050, including 44% from renewables, as manifested by our Energy Strategy 2050. We are very confident that we will continue to raise our ambitions even further over time and taking into account technology innovations. A number of world-class UAE renewable projects, including the 1.177 gigawatt Noor Abu Dhabi solar PV project operational since 2019. We also have the 5 gigawatt Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum solar park, which will be the largest single-site solar project in the world upon completion in 2030. And more recently, we announced the 2 gigawatt Abu Dhabi PV power plant in Al Dhafra. So back to the point, the achievements of SDG plays a major role also in the UAE in our humanitarian work and global support. And since 2013, the UAE has contributed around $1 billion in aid to developing countries to implement renewable energy projects that have transformed entire communities. The Abu Dhabi Fund for Development Facility in collaboration with IRENA, for example, is just one shining example of such efforts. 2013 saw the birth of the $50 million UAE Pacific Partnership Fund that aims to address the development challenges posed by the specific region's energy costs that are among the highest in the world. 2017, the US $50 million UAE Caribbean Renewable Energy Fund followed suit with a mission to deploy renewable energy projects in 16 Caribbean countries in 2019. The fund inaugurated 3 projects to install 1.54 megawatt PV in the Bahamas, Barbados, and St. Vincent and Grenadines. That is just an outline of our national and international ambitions to increase the access to energy. A lot of work is done with the support of international partners, research institutes, and the involvement of the private sector and finance institutions to raise our overall ambition and advance renewable energy technologies, increase access to end users, and inclusion of different sectors, which are still stand on the sidelines of renewable energy transition, such as the food industry, transportation, and heavy industry. So, Minoru, I'm looking forward to working with the technical group on this exciting topic and to share much more examples of the UAE is doing and learn as we move to the process how we can together achieve SDG 7 and all linked SDGs to achieve sustainable development for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nawar. Always pleasure to hear from you. You're one of the sort of leaders, women leader in the energy scene. So we definitely look forward to having your strong cooperation and support for moving forward. Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Marcel Alès, who is the Global Head of Energy at UNDP. I'm not sure whether Marcel, who is a good friend of mine, is on the screen. Yeah, you are, Marcel. Hi. Now, Marcel, obviously I don't have to explain what this is all about. The UNDP is the administrator of UNDP is also co-chair of UN Energy and co-chair of High-Level Dialogue on Energy, together with the SRSG. So you know exactly how we're doing, and we're working together to plan and implement and support member states deliver on the objective. So from your perspective, tell me a little bit about, what do you see, that we as the international organizations needs to be supporting all stakeholders to get to SDG 7, and of course, going beyond 2030 and get to the 2050 net zero emissions. And then you have been inside there. So can you also tell us a little bit, what do you see high-level dialogue energy process can help deliver that objective? Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Minoru and the organizers for inviting UNDP to say a few words on this important topic. Yes, so again, as already said by the previous speakers, the importance of energy cannot be overstated. At UNDP, we are a development organization. Development is really our primary objective. And we have become increasingly convinced of the importance, the centrality of energy in allowing full human development and achieving the 2030 development goals. And it's increasingly clear that if we do not achieve SDG 7 targets, we're simply going to fail on many, if not all of the others. So there's a lot at stake. Now, I think there is at the same time a lot of optimism. And there's reason to be optimistic. 2020 was a difficult year in many ways, and it might very well turn out to be a real inflection point, I hope, for the world. For a long time, a shift to more cleaner sources of energy was seen as too costly, right? I think with the dramatic cost reductions we have seen over the years, this is really less and less of an issue. There's also a lot of progress that has been made on the technology front. So here again, with existing technologies, we're pretty convinced that we can get there, if maybe not fully, but very far. So we should not just wait for the latest new technology to come out. We should get moving. So a major factor for UNDP and a major concern for UNDP is that we can address the inequalities of today's world, which have existed for a long time, but which have further been deepened last year with the pandemic and the whole, which is not over yet, right? And energy can play an important part in this, in reducing these inequalities and creating access to energy and allowing people to have, a broader range of options and improve their conditions in life. So what we as UNDP would like to offer is first, obviously, our full support. And we would like to use our infrastructure, our presence, as many of you know. We are present in many of the developing countries, the global south, and not often for decades. So we can put all that knowledge that we have at the local level to the problem and offer this to help achieve progress on this front. What we do believe is that the high-level dialogue can help focus, if you like, and bring about the how do you put it, the political will that is needed to make this happen. We truly believe that that's the one ingredient that can make all the other things move forward. And so together with our ongoing and building on our portfolio of presence for decades on energy in many of these countries, we hope we can bring about the enabling conditions and to create these conditions that are going to be necessary to attract the investment needed, to allow the private sector to really put their shoulder to the wheel and start investing in the sector. We know that the sector has the fundamentals to be investable. That is a big advantage. That's not always the case with many of the other social sectors. And so by creating the right policies, regulatory conditions, we think that we can bring about how you say it, a change in a real truly scaling up, because this is the one thing I think that has been lacking. We know a lot, there is money, we know the technologies to do it, we know what sort of policies are needed, but we need to dramatically scale up our collective effort. This is what's going to determine whether we will be successful or not. We have 10 years to go, or even a little bit less, but I'm pretty sure it can be done. If you look back, you know, the last decade, hundreds of millions of people have been given access to clean energy. It's not enough, sure, but it shows what's possible if the political will is there. This high-level dialogue can really help us achieve that political will. And so, you know, the world can count on UNDP to put in our bid. You will see in the coming months, we are going to scale up our presence and our efforts. Over to you.
Thank you, Marcel. It's very important point here. Now, I also mentioned ambitions and also consistent leadership, right? And then obviously, Marcel, you mentioned the importance of scale. We cannot be just complacent with doing good things here and there only. I think, you know, we really need to bring the big sort of solutions, scale involving everybody, so we can actually address the challenges moving forward. So thank you so much. With this, now I would like to turn to Ms. Sira Oparacha, who is the Global Coordinator of Energia, which connects energy community with gender empowerment. I don't know whether Sira is on the screen. Yeah, you are, Sira. Welcome, and nice being with you again. I don't know whether you are off muted. Cannot hear you as yet. Yes, it should be. Not yet. Okay. If this is not resolved, maybe we come back, Elizabeth, right? Maybe this is a better option. Thank you, Elizabeth nodding. Rohit, I don't know whether you are ready.
I'm ready, Minoru.
Thank you so much, Rohit, for stepping in on this one. So may I turn to Mr. Rohit Khanna, who is the manager of ESMA program at World Bank. And obviously, he has been the central pillar of supporting the global policy making and then working with us at the United Nations to shape the agenda for many, many years. So Rohit, welcome. Would you tell us a little bit about your perspective from working at the World Bank, but also you as a person coming from India, looking at sort of macro developing country situations, how the energy the agenda is affecting our life, and how do you see that advancement of SDG 7 broadly going forward, in particular as it relates to developing countries, and what do you see that high-level dialogue could help? Rohit, over to you.
Thank you, Minoru, and Happy New Year to you, and of course to a lot of good friends that I see on the screen: Francesco, Dabilola, Marcel, Sheila, John, a lot of old friends that we have not met in a very long time, and hopefully before the year is out, we will all get a chance to meet again. So best wishes for the new year to all of you. Thanks very much for having me on the panel. I think that really where I want to start is to say that the way we see it, the high-level dialogue is extremely important because of some numbers that we should put on the table on access. So in 2010, 1.2 billion people were without access. A decade later, that number was about 789 million. So a lot of progress, but that means that the projection is that by 2030, that number will still be over 600 million. On access to clean cooking, pretty much the number has hardly budged in 2 decades. Clearly the access agenda needs a push. And I think from the energy sector perspective, what we see is that there are these twin challenges of decarbonization and universal access. They're related, but they're twin challenges. The decarbonization agenda has a very powerful platform in the Climate Change Conference of Parties. And I really hope, from my perspective, we can sort of have the high-level dialogue as the forum, the twin to the COP for energy access. And it's important to think about that, because the Climate Change Forum is about climate change with development co-benefits. And I hope the high-level dialogue will be about energy access with climate co-benefits. There's a subtle difference between the two. Both are important. And I think that's the unique role that I hope the high-level dialogue will bring to the international agenda. So, what we would hope that we would sort of be able to come out of the high-level dialogue is, as Damilola said, a global program of action, a global plan of action, a global consensus around the building blocks that are necessary for us to get to 2030. We have the target. What we don't have is the roadmap to get there, globally speaking. And I think, therefore, it's very timely that as we enter into the final decade before 2030, that we do agree globally on what that roadmap, what those basic milestones need to be to get to 2030. And so let me put on the table what I think on the access agenda we should hope. I mean, we should definitely hope that every country has integrated electrification plans that is based on geospatial electrification planning on good data, that clean cooking is integrated into national energy planning, that every country has identified the policy and regulatory gaps, that there is a clear understanding that we must develop national electrification, national energy access programs that are inclusive, that leave no one behind, and that there is a need for access to be closely linked to productive uses, to improve livelihoods, to agriculture, to human capital development, and so on. So I think that this is what I see as sort of the basic ingredients of that plan of action. And then I hope the compacts will be, in a sense, the NDCs of access. These are each country's own determined commitments, its own roadmap to how they will bring all those building blocks together in their own way to achieve universal access. And we hope that those compacts will not just be the commitments of individual countries, but that they will be funded, that development partners will say that, yes, we agree to that these are well-designed compacts and we are partners with you to get there. So these should not be a one-way set of requirements for our counterpart countries to prepare all kinds of strategies. These must be funded and hopefully with some commitments to implementation. So I think the last thing I would say is that I specifically, what we would like to see are really in 2 areas where I think the high-level dialogue can make a big difference. The first is a really big push on decentralized renewable energy. You see behind me the picture of something that Damilola should be very proud of. It's the mini grid at Rokota community in Nigeria. This community had this mini grid in place 60 days from approval after waiting 60 years for the grid to get to them. Decentralized renewable energy is going to be the pathway for at least 500 million people to get access. And so I hope that we can come up with a global plan of action on mini grids, on off-grid solar, and really push the decentralized renewable energy agenda. And of course, as I always say, we must never sort of treat access to clean cooking, access to modern energy cooking services as the stepchild of the access agenda. And I hope that working together with WHO, with IRENA, and with others through HEPA, we can really have a robust agenda on clean cooking on the table at the HLD. So with that, I will conclude. Thank you very much, Minoru.
Rohit, thank you so much. The Secretary General of the United Nations always say we have to work on two things: inclusivity and sustainability together. And I think, Rohit, you mentioned the central importance of the energy access for the inclusivity, of course. And then, increasingly it is getting the same side, two sides of the same coin. As also Marcel mentioned, the opportunity exists that the technology is evolving so much, renewable energy and decentralized solution that Rohit, you just mentioned. They will bring all the issues of inclusivity and sustainability together. So I think, we are really at the sort of the good moment to bring real roadmaps. And I hope that, everybody who on the call and also on the panel be able to sort of support developing the considerably good in the global roadmap in the frame of a technical working group to come very soon. Thank you so much, Rohit, for pointing it out. I hope, Sila, you're back now, well connected. Somehow we don't hear you still. Okay, so there may be a technical challenges. Sila, I think we have another 30 minutes or so to go. So hopefully that we'll be able to get you back on the screen. With this one, I'm not sure whether either Safia 2 or John would be available. Safia 2, are you online and available? Okay, I cannot hear you either. Do you think you can off mute?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Fantastic, yes, so thank you so much and stepping in, and then while I think Sila is working on it. So may I introduce once again Ms. Safia Tu Azuma Noho, Director of the Independent Delivery Unit of Africa Renewable Energy Initiative. Safia Tu obviously has been inside this, the central challenges of energy access, the energy transitions in the context of Africa. Now, whoever working on this, energy topic, we cannot actually sort of, stay away from that focus. Now, please tell us and guide us a little bit based on your experiences, how we can actually bring this, access and transformation of energy agenda together in the context of Africa, and how global dialogue on this topic, high-level dialogue on energy, you think could help. Safia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists. I would also like to start by thanking the organizers for inviting ARE to this very important high-level dialogue on energy 2021. For those who are not very familiar with ARE, I will just say a few words. The Africa Renewable Energy Initiative ARE is a transformative Africa-owned and Africa-led inclusive effort to accelerate and scale up the harnessing of the continent's considerable renewable energy potential. So the initiative was launched in Paris at the COP with the aim to help achieve sustainable and sound economic development by ensuring universal access to sufficient amount of clean, appropriate, and affordable energy. The second objective is to help African countries leapfrog towards renewable energy systems that support their low carbon development strategy while enhancing economic and energy security. So basically, the basic premises of the initiative is that all societies, including those in Africa, must transition to low to zero carbon energy systems in order to avoid catastrophic climate change, in addition to the goal of universal access to energy. So regarding, my contribution to how to accelerate the achievement of the SDG 7, I would suggest to focus on, first of all, supporting the effort of countries and regions to create conducive ecosystem through the strengthening of the policy, regulatory support, and incentive framework for attracting both public and private investment. And from the experience of ARE, that could be done through platforms for training and experience sharing on specific themes in close collaborations with countries, regional institutions, partners, as well as international organizations with proven experience in those selected teams. The second key area I would like also to focus on is the facilitation of the project implementation by providing project development support through capacity building and technical assistance. We know that in most of the developing countries, that capacity is really lacking. And also, if you can also focus on the project financing and funding through the mobilization of partners by raising the awareness of countries and regions on the international funding opportunities that are available for them. Because from the experience of Africa, if you look at, the public sector, even the private sector, not all the key stakeholders, even the decision makers, are available of the existing funding opportunities. So the role of the dialogue could be also to raise their awareness, to know really how much funds they do have untapped, from the international scene. And also how to support them to formulate investment proposals that will be directed at those kind of funding sources. That will be very, very helpful for achieving the SDG 7. Furthermore, achieving the objective of SDG 7 requires the deployment of remarkable effort to reach population that is currently not connected to national grid. For instance, in the case of Africa, we have nearly half of the population that is not connected to the grid. So we need really to, as I said, to deploy a remarkable effort to reach them, and also to move to a new vision of electricity access that goes beyond the bare minimum requirement for households. Because so far, if we speak about access in the context of Africa, people see it at household level. So we should move from that vision. So in that regard, plans should be developed for expanding access to electricity for social services. As regions, they develop social security provision and other means of improving welfare for their population over the coming decade. So for our side, from our side, we do have an asset. By asset, we have a pipeline of over 600 renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. That has been, they have been identified as area compliant, and they do have our label. So the implementation of those kind of projects could significantly contribute to the achievement of SDG 7 and subsequently to the overall goal of the high-level dialogue on energy. Now, to scale the energy, we know that the scale of the energy challenges are enormous, but so are also the opportunities. So transformational change is both needed and possible, but it must be stimulated by truly collaborative international effort and goodwill. Someone already mentioned it before. So that is very, very, very important. Cooperation and the willing to work together. So the achievement of the SDG 7 requires fostering a partnership and bringing together all the stakeholders. That's really what we are aiming also at ARE, as well as mobilizing the new international support. So that's the importance of coordination between all partners and stakeholders so that they complement each other and achieve more. What I can say from ARE side is that we are really ready to work with all partners and players in the renewable energy sector in Africa. And I will really, with your permission, like to express ARE's full support to the objective of the high-level dialogue to raise the ambition and accelerate action towards the achievement of the SDG7 and the Paris Agreement on climate change. I would also like to express the readiness of the ARE Independent Delivery Unit, which acts as the secretariat, to contribute substantially to the work of the Technical Working Group on Energy Transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. And then I think you pointed out a very important point of capacity. And this has been always the issues. And we really have to give a deep look at how we make sure there's a sufficient capacity existing at the local level. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to turn to Mr. John Christensen, who is the Director of UNEP DTU Partnership. John, are you available?
Yes, thank you, Minoru.
Thank you. And you've heard my questions. I'm not going to repeat it.
No, and of course, now being behind a number of other panelists who've said so many wise things, it becomes increasingly difficult to come up with new things. So what I'm going to do is ladies and gentlemen, and panel members and friends, that Minoru also spelled out, that this is kind of an old family, and welcome the new ones, of course. And I think Rohit did an excellent job on the access part. So I'm going to talk a little more about climate, not to see that there's sort of competition between the two. And I fully agree that access has been a little bit like when you look at climate, the adaptation part has always been the smaller family member. It's always been about mitigation, and it's hard to get focus on adaptation. And in the energy space, it has been difficult to get enough focus on the access agenda. But I think that has been covered. But I mean, I promised first of all to say that UNEP is very happy about this high-level event. We think it's really welcome, and it comes as a crucial time, as Damiolo also spelled out in the beginning. And we are very supportive of the process and the new leadership of UN Energy that really revitalizes that structure, which has been in place for quite a long time, but has had sort of its ups and downs. And we really see this revitalization as really crucial for the leadership on energy in the UN. I just want to go back to, we issue every year what is called the emissions gap report. And we put it out about a month ago. And it looks at how are we performing in relation to the goals we set ourselves in Paris. And in very short format, the conclusions of the report is that if we want to be on a realistic track towards the goals we set, we need to reduce emissions globally by 7% per year. And that's a number that we haven't seen at any given time. And if you translate that into what it takes, it's a tremendous challenge, especially if you look at the same time at common but differentiated responsibilities. Not everybody can do that. So some of the big industrialized countries, some of the big emitters need to take the lead. And when we look at where are the options, a lot of the options clearly come out in the energy space. So therefore, if we can, as was described also in the timing, use the high-level meeting and dialogue as a stepping stone towards COP and get real commitment in the energy sector, it would be tremendously important. From the UNEP side, we hope to engage across the different tracks that was outlined in the slides, and expect to focus on the transitions area, because we are quite active on energy efficiency and on transport. And of course, together with Irina and others, could cover that area. I think one thing, if we look back at the Secretary General Summit in 2019, we were quite engaged in the energy track on the summit. And it was very clear that there was a very strong interest from countries in the energy track. But because the summit, of course, covered all angles, it was limited how many initiatives could actually be put forward in the end. One thing that we were involved in that we think has a lot of potential and also links with the goals that have been set for the activities up around the dialogue and following the dialogue is something we ended up calling the 3% Club, that we established together with the IEA, UNIDO, Sustainable Energy for All, and the UN Environment Programme, plus a large group of private companies from around the world, essentially trying to work with countries to help them improve their annual energy efficiency per year by 3%. It sounds like a very modest effort, but no country has done that consistently over a longer period in history. And the IEA studies indicate that if countries actually could move just to that level of improvement, it would take care of a large chunk of the emission reductions I described before. So we have a mechanism in that space that is organizing itself, engaging countries, and we can also see it in the work we're doing with NDCs with the countries right now, that there is a strong interest, because energy efficiency is sort of, in many cases, the easy option in the beginning, because there are lots of things you can do that pays back very quickly and usually has other co-benefits, both environment, employment, and so on. So it's really an area where we see a possibility to focus and contribute to the process that we described. I think I'll just finish by that and then move on and hope Sheila will be able to come online. Thanks, Minoru.
John, thank you so much. And then you have picked up a very important point on the energy efficiency. Excuse me. Energy efficiency is obviously one of the three major targets of SDG 7, says doubling the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. Sorry. So we definitely need to give a very big focus on the moving forward on that. And then you also touched upon an important point of making sure keep the tent as big as possible. So we'll be able to be as inclusive, as comprehensive as possible. I think it's a very important point. Now, I don't know whether Sarah is back finally. Still, I cannot hear you. Let's go to Helen, Miss Helen Watts, who is the coordinator of the student energy. I don't know whether it's Helen, you are online. Here you are.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Now we can hear you so well, Helen. Now, obviously, all what we're talking about here does not make sense if we don't have people power behind it. And then as you can see that, whatever sort of, or the momentum that we could create on any topic, the center here is always the youth. Could you tell us from your perspective, how we can actually drive this, energy transformations to address inclusivity and sustainability challenges together? And also, how do you expect high-level dialogue energies to, help on that one? Over to you, Helen.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you very much to the organizers, to UN Energy, Sustainable Energy for All, and Irina, of course, among many, for holding this conversation. And to start off, on behalf of Student Energy, and as a young person myself, we do strongly support the commitment to achieving SDG 7 by 2030. I think in the global climate and energy action space, we don't often hear a timeline to 2030. It's one that young people like to work with a lot more frequently than timelines to 2040 and 2050. And so I think in that respect, this is already very aligned with how young people see kind of the level of urgency that's needed to accelerate this transition. So I'll start off just by highlighting kind of a key data point here, that there are almost 3 billion young people between the ages of 25 and 30 years old around the world, which does make them a really critical stakeholder in achieving SDG 7 by 2030. And with Student Energy, we've been working to meaningfully engage and empower young people for 12 years. So we have a lot that we're hoping to bring to the table and to this process to really ensure that effective and meaningful intergenerational collaboration can be a part of the high-level dialogue on energy and really serve to shape and future-proof the roadmap that we set out. So we developed a theory of change, which I think speaks to why we've been around for so long as a youth-led organization, as well as we created a theory of change that was really for youth and designed by youth, and identified a set of different kind of building blocks that young people see as critical to being able to build the sustainable energy future that we need to achieve and achieving SDG 7 by 2030. And so these include building blocks such as intergenerational and global equity, cultural shifts, collaboration and cooperation, mobilized finance, policy frameworks, and technologies developed and implemented. So a lot of what we've talked about today and what we've heard from my fellow panelists as well is very much aligned with what young people want to be actively working on and contributing to. And so we kind of deliver on our theory of change in two key ways. We work a lot to create change agents, and this is where we really equip and empower young people with the skills and competencies and knowledge that they need to feel confident leading action both at a community level and with their elected officials and other leaders in the energy system. On the other side of that, we also work a lot to do what we call making space for youth to act. Me showing up in this space is maybe one good example of that, but there's other ways in which we make sure that we're working with different organizations and institutions to really create that space for young people to be invited to have a seat at the table, and not just in a beneficiary capacity, but really as a partner in shaping agendas, and being kind of critical partners in planning and decision making. So I'll kind of take you through a couple of our key maybe takeaways on how engaging young people can really be embedded in the high level dialogue on energy, and move into Student Energy's kind of overall call to actions for 2021. We're in a really unique point in time. Young people are very concerned about the future of work, given the impacts that the global pandemic has had on their livelihoods. And at the same time, their determination to make sure that we have a safe future for them and their future generations has not diminished at all. And so it's really important that those values and that perspective is really embedded in decisions that we're making. So there's one point that I want to make around leveraging young people's perspectives, ideas, and lived realities. So young people, there isn't necessarily only this responsibility to engage young people from kind of a justice and inclusion perspective, but there's also a real added value to engaging with young people. They're thinking about complex challenges in really unique and fresh ways. And they're very on the ground and connected to their communities in both kind of traditional and new ways as well. And that's something that we really need to have firmly embedded in decisions that we're making that will go through to 2030, because that's the only way that that trajectory will be future-proofed and carried forward effectively. So we did some research with, for example, of how young people are thinking on complex challenges in really critical ways and adding a lot of value to that space. We worked with the Leadership Group for Industry Transition at the end of last year on some critical research around transitioning the heavy industry sector. And as we know, that's one of the highest emitting sectors on our planet. It's a really, really challenging one to abate. And young people brought really interesting, diverse and nuanced perspectives to that issue. And they're thinking the same way about all of the different dimensions of the SDG 7 challenge as well, whether that's energy access, clean cooking, which of course has not seen progress at the pace and scale that is needed, and of course to curb our global emissions as well. They really challenge the one-size-fits-all approach by continuously using a lens of intersectionality when they're developing and contributing solutions and ideas as well. Young people are very, very tuned in to kind of who is being impacted the most and how are those impacts compounded by other factors. So if you're thinking about which communities are currently most impacted by an unsustainable energy system, young people and others on this call, of course, as well, but young people are really trying to kind of push the conversation in a direction of, how do those impacts on those vulnerable communities, how are those exacerbated when we're talking about women, or when we're talking about young people, or when we're talking about BIPOC communities. And so that's a really important perspective that they also bring to the table, and that needs to be not an afterthought in building these roadmaps, but really a critical dimension. And so I fundamentally believe that we will not reach SDG 7 and the interconnected SDGs that young people care deeply about without having everyone at the table and disrupting the generational power dynamics that have prevented young people from having agency in these spaces historically. And we're starting to see that tune shift. So I'm really hoping to be a part of supporting all of you to continue that momentum and continue widening the tent, which has been mentioned as well. So there's a few different kind of ways in which this really needs to be done. We have 5 calls to action at Student Energy for 2021 that I think can definitely be applied to the high level dialogue on energy and the kind of youth values that we bring into that space. So we're calling on actors in the energy and climate space and kind of our global movement to achieve SDG 7 to support intersectional climate action and an energy transition that leaves no one behind. So we must fight for climate and energy justice at the same time as we reduce our emissions, regardless of what sector we work in. Young people recognize that there is no meaningful action that does not also address the social, economic, and environmental injustices caused by our current energy system. And in every one of our programs, students emphasize that we must first and foremost design action strategies that empower and protect communities around the world who are made most vulnerable to the effects of climate change and an inequitable global economy, as well as protecting nature. Our second call to action is to support youth directly with funding. And I don't think this gets talked enough about young people as young people who haven't necessarily started their career trajectories, who are in quite a vulnerable position. You know, I can't speak more about how that's been exacerbated by this past year, but young people need to be supported to access these spaces in a compensated way and to be able to deliver their solutions in a compensated way. And so this can be building capacities for young people to learn how to fundraise and access finance, but it can also mean a rethinking of which finance opportunities are available in the SDG 7 space and how are they really being how are they being designed in a way that that is youth inclusive? And so that's something that we've been working quite a bit on with our partners. The third one is recognizing the growing demand for career building opportunities. So young people really want to build their knowledge and grow their careers in SDG 7 related areas, so whether that's clean energy or energy access. And so these learning and skill building opportunities do need to be accessible around the world, fully inclusive, free of cost, and open to students from all academic backgrounds. We run a Leaders Fellowship program that's a free 10-month virtual energy education and skill building program. And this year alone, we saw a huge spike in the applications to participate as young people face cancellations of internships and other programs around the world. Yes.
I think, we need to roll.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Okay, great. So I'll leave it with the Global Youth Energy Outlook, which is a great way to leave off. We are conducting a global set of data and research on youth perspectives on the energy transition. We'll be bringing 50,000 young people into that work. And so we're excited to also bring that into the high-level dialogue on energy. In this kind of data, this need to have data as part of the toolbox. And so I'm looking forward to sharing more about the Global Youth Energy Outlook with all of you as that's conducted this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think in the high-level dialogue, energy cannot be successful if we don't have a meaningful engagement of the youth. So I think you gave us a lot of good suggestions and entry points. We love to work with you and others in the youth community to make sure youth will be able to be the very sort of central actor as well as the solution providers moving forward. And we've been reaching out to, through the multi-stakeholder outreach and briefing that this organizes, and we'll continue to enhance this means. So we look forward to working together with you. Thank you so much. Sira, I don't know whether you're back finally. Not hearing you. Sira? Okay, so Sira, wait until another time, please. Now, may I now invite, two distinguished, the Kickstarters, the Ambassador Thomas Anker Christensen from Denmark. Thomas, are you available now?
Hey Minoru, yes I am, but I am really sorry for Sheila that that she's not able to join. I think her voice is maybe one of the most important ones in this conversation. Maybe Sheila, you should try to log out and log back in. Sometimes that works. Anyway, thank you Minoru, and thanks to the panelists for all your valuable remarks. We know each other well, and we are amongst friends here. So let's try to be practical as we prepare for the dialogue. And I don't need to explain to all of you the credentials of Denmark in this conversation, both in terms of our national efforts, our climate law, 70% emissions reduction target for 2030, and the task that we have been given. I, in my new role as climate ambassador, but actually the whole Danish Foreign Service, to leverage this into global action with a focus on helping the global community to achieve the Paris goals. and energy is indeed, as everyone has said, key to this. And that's both the high emission dimension that John has highlighted, but equally also the access side that Damilola talked about, that Rohit highlighted, and in a way they are, I think, aligned and twin sides of the same dimension. And we both need to focus on energy access, renewables, efficiency, but also the two other targets of SDG 7, which is capacity building and finance that people have talked to, and they all need to come together in the dialogue for the dialogue to be successful. And we know that the link Damilola talked about seeing this also as a catalyst for the energy discussion at COP26 in Glasgow is extremely important. So I would say we need, as you said, Minoru, to create this push, this catalytic moment where finance, capacity building, and energy ambition goes up. But in order to do so, and to be very practical, I would urge you, Minoru, and everyone else to get going in terms of actually appointing the country co-leads that were mentioned in Damilola's slide, because we are quite a number of member states who are eager to pull up our sleeves and get to work. But we've been waiting for you, for the UN system, for a long time to get to this moment, and the time until September is getting short. We have the political will to help lift this into the right space, but time is getting short. So my number one advice would be actually appoint the co-leads from those member states that are ready to get going, and then let us put our shoulder to the wheel, working with IRENA, with UNDP, with all the UN agencies that are in charge of the separate tracks outlined by Damilola. So that's number one. Number two, we need to make sure that there's no confusion about the way the climate and energy tracks are interlinked. And I think several of you have spoken to it, but we cannot have energy compacts and clean energy offers that are not totally aligned with the NDCs. I mean, in a way, we have to lift the energy component out of the NDCs and use this occasion to even strengthen them and ramp them up, whether it is on efficiency or access or renewables, according to each country's setting. And if we need to, and I think we do, and the lady from RE spoke to this very passionately, work at country level to help countries ramp up their plans, get the capacity building, get the implementation support that they need. I mean, that takes time. We only have 8 months until the dialogue. In order to get that in order at country level, including with member states such as mine, we need to have the marching orders tomorrow. And I would really urge you to do this. And then number three, the implementation plans, especially the financing. We have a number of tools. We have new structures that were set up at the Secretary General's dialogue or summit, including the climate investment platform and other instruments. We have a whole body of work on just transition, on the workers' rights, on the people dimension that Helen talked about. But in order to get to scale and speed, we need to have those implementation plans ready well in time for the summit in order to engage both governments and donors. And finally, for the G20 and the LDCs and SIDS to really be up to speed, we need to have this as an inclusive process. It cannot take place just in a small circle. We are ready to step up, to take leadership in a track. I know there are other governments that are ready to do so. So we do look forward to a partnership based on this wide and broad multi-stakeholder collaboration. Thank you, Minoru.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Your enthusiasm, leadership transpires. So we are definitely sort of, immediately working on making sure this process gets off the ground with announcement coming up very soon. Thank you so much for your leadership and support. Look forward to working with Denmark and all other countries. Now I'm turn to Ms. Heike Hem, who is the Director of Climate Policy and Finance, BMZ, from Germany. Heike.
Thank you very much, colleagues. It was such an inspiring meeting, and thank you for having me. The high-level dialogue is a much-needed opportunity, and Germany is happy to engage for ambition and impact, as colleagues were talking about before. And you know, Germany is a fierce supporter of the energy transition agenda and the two challenges that all colleagues mentioned regarding access, SDG 7, but also climate neutrality and the Paris Agreement, 1.5 degree world. These are really dear to our heart, and we support partner countries in the fundamental transformation of the energy sector with the objective 100% energy access from 100% renewable resources. And this requires concerted and harmonized action by all of us. And this is how I understood what we learned today also about the high-level dialogue, but also about the compacts. We need ownership, policies, regulation, and coordinated support as a prerequisite for scaling up. And I was very happy to see or hear also the perspective about Africa, because from our point of view, this really deserves special attention due to the challenges as well as the high potential. So Africa, from our perspective, is the continent of opportunity, and this is especially true for renewable energies. With the high-level dialogue for Africa, but not only, we see really a chance to leapfrog to sustainable energy systems. And Africa can become the first truly green carbon-free continent. And this is something that we are really happy to engage as Germany, but also within the European Union. And just to be brief, I would like to highlight, also looking forward to the high-level dialogue, that we should not only refer to the development and progress in recent years that shows that renewable energies can guarantee low cost, low risk, cities-oriented sustainable energy supply. But we should really focus and get across, communicate the opportunities for jobs and growth and wealth. This is connected to renewable energy, to the energy transition. And I think this is an important message if we want others to really engage in what we all believe in. So this would be my expectation, that the high-level dialogue talks about the growth engine that is that energy transition can be. And in this respect, on the European level, we are engaging heavily during our presidency, but also in this year, to support the European Commission in the Africa EU Green Energy Initiative, based on the new comprehensive strategy with Africa, that is really, I think, quite aligned what this initiative plans with what the high-level dialogue and the compact is about. And this leads me to my third point, that I think what Thomas also mentioned, that time is crucial, but also linking up to existing initiatives to other actors, bring them all on board and develop a joint vision. And not only vision, we need concrete action. And we stand ready to engage with all of you. And moving forward, my last aspect, I think the high-level dialogue should also bring in the challenges, but also the power and potential that lies in our pandemic response. This pandemic puts challenges on all countries and also on energy transition, but it's also the potential that if we use the time now and the money now wisely and build back better and greener, then the energy transition becomes a reality. So this is really a connection I think we should find for the high-level energy dialogue to build back better and link us to this conversation. Thank you so much and happy to be part of this conversation. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Heike. I think you summarized very well. Building back better, greener, and also greener moving forward. And I think we heard a lot of ambitions, opportunities, and the need for scale and urgency to act together immediately. And we at the United Nations part are very much committed to put together a very inclusive plan of actions next 9 months, and then be able to sort of immediately engage all of you, starting with member states, but also all stakeholders move forward. With my real thanks to all the panelists, and of course, to Elena for facilitating. I'm really sorry for Sila, but I know that Sila, you'll be called upon like 100 times next 9 months. Please do not forget that this is gonna come. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, everybody. This was really very, very interesting. I don't know where the time went. And also, next week we're going to have a IRENA assembly, and many of the countries will be speaking on their energy transition and the needs and development. So I think it's going to be very interesting a few days for us to get a good sense of where we are with energy transition and how we can better shape the path towards the high-level dialogue. I will now ask our colleague from UNDP, Mr. Pradeep Kurukulasaria, Director for Nature, Climate and Energy and Executive Coordinator for Environmental Finance at UNDP, to deliver concluding remarks. So Pradeep, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sheila, and it's great to see many of you once again. John, especially good to see you. I haven't seen you for a while. Well, first of all, I was reflecting on what everybody said, and I think I have to say that this is probably one of those moments that gives me real hope for the future, because I cannot think of too many instances in the past where in a panel like this, we have all essentially echoed a similar vision for the future. I think that is a great starting point to be at, particularly as we get the real work underway for the high-level dialogue, and most importantly, beyond. This is really the beginning of that effort, and I am very, very optimistic that with the views that have been echoed here, where we are all in agreement of the interlinkages between the climate agenda, the energy agenda, the need to try and tackle these issues in an integrated way, that we will get there. I think we certainly at UNDP find it, frankly, a little bit offensive that there are 789 million people still without access to clean and affordable and renewable energy. Today, I think this is something that we all share, and the urgency to try and address this, not just for those lives that are really at the core of it, but the broader issues of climate and justice and so on, inequality, we have to get going. In that context, I think I absolutely agree with Christians, have to act fast, not just to get going on the requirements to ensure that the road to September is really marked by important actions that really need to take place at the country level, as well as the discourse that has to take place at the global level. And we need to move on that very, very quickly. And I think certainly you have the full commitment of UNDP, as I do with the Special Representative for Sustainable Energy for All, and all partners in DESA who are working on this, to ensure that we put the right pieces in place very quickly and get going. And that urgency certainly was discussed as recently as yesterday, and I have no doubt that the announcements that everybody is keen to hear will be coming very shortly, followed by various actions that need to take place. This is a key moment to crystallize global action for sustainable energy, no doubt about it. And the high-level dialogue certainly is really the catalyst for that. But at the same time, the third point I want to make is really, this is also much more than simply the milestone in September and global statements and agreements and roadmaps. This really is about galvanizing the actions needed to really effect the kind of changes that are needed on the ground. And frankly, some of those things need to also start now. We need to see these changes take place very quickly, because at the end of the day, we have less than 9 years now. And by the end of the year, it's going to be less than 8 years. So we are really running against the clock. But I think with the kind of partnerships that are present here, but also outside of this group, hopefully listening in and thinking about ways in which we can all come together, I really see a coalition here taking fruit that will really push the envelope on this. So I remain very, very optimistic that the way ahead is bright. So let's, colleagues, let's really put all our collective shoulders to the wheel here to make sure that 2021 is the year for sustainable energy. It's a year that really puts us on the track to deliver not just universal access, but achieve the energy transition, as well as contribute to the achievement of nearly all other SDGs. With that, Elizabeth, I hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the speakers who were with us this afternoon, but also the attendees. I was actually looking at the number. Everybody stayed with us until the end, and this is a good sign. So hopefully we're going to stay together until September and beyond. I now close this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.